Everyone, Brian Fitzpatrick here, and it's great to join you for the Rail Passenger Association's virtual advocacy conference. Passenger rail is an essential element of our nation's surface transportation network. And passenger and freight rail has been responsible for creating jobs, fostering community development, and promoting economic growth across our country for decades. Our nation has a storied history with passenger and commuter rail. Amtrak began service in 1971, operating 184 trains a day out of 323 stations. Now Amtrak serves more than 500 destinations and operates more than 300 trains a day, connecting hundreds of rural communities with our urban centers. However, it is no secret that American railways are falling behind compared to our international counterparts, and the COVID-19 pandemic has only exacerbated this issue. Investing in America's rail infrastructure is critical to strengthening the U.S. economy in the wake of the pandemic-driven economic downturn. The CARES Act included $1 billion in funding for Amtrak and $25 billion for transit, providing much-needed relief for passenger rail and transit agencies impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. But despite this relief provided in the CARES Act, Amtrak and other transit agencies reported the need for additional assistance. The Problem Solvers Caucus, a bipartisan group that I co-chair, my colleagues on that caucus and I have worked diligently with our Senate allies to create a bipartisan infrastructure plan that would solve our nation's deteriorating infrastructure by creating jobs, strengthening our economy, protecting our environment, and improving the quality of life for Americans. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act achieves just that and authorizes $66 billion in additional funding for transformational freight and passenger rail provisions. This landmark legislation will allow for critical Amtrak reforms and provides updates to intercity passenger rail policy and rail safety. This Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act represents Congress's commitment to improving crumbling rail systems and transit across America. And I look forward to the passage of this bipartisan measure. And in closing, I'd like to recognize the efforts and sacrifices made by our courageous rail transportation workers, both before and during this pandemic. When a global pandemic struck, you all, America's frontline transportation workforce, never took a day off. Thank you on behalf of all of our communities in our country, and God bless.
All right. Wonderful message from the congressman. So here we are. We are at the top of the hour. We're going to get Barry Green, Tom Compson, and Dan Bilka hosting privileges. So while we're doing that, my name is Joe Aiello. If you don't know me, I am the National Field Coordinator for the Rail Passenger Association. Welcome everybody to the our main section of our Tuesday conference. So we're going to start off with the first interactive workshop. We had a great day yesterday. Wonderful speakers, fantastic questions, great presentation this morning from the council. Congratulations to those on the CCC. I served on that once before when I was in the council, so it's a very very important part of our what we do here. But let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get into things here. So I'm going to show you guys what we're about to do today. Things are a little janky. We had construction going on, and this is the joys of working from home. There's construction going on in my building, on the roof, noise all morning. So things are a little So here's our agenda. So we're going to do a quick intro. This is me rambling. We're going to do some quick base polling. We're going to get you guys involved. We're going to ask you guys a couple questions. Then we have a couple brief presentations. Dan, Barry, and Tom are going to show you guys what they're up to regionally, locally, statewide, everything that we're doing from the board and from the council. And then we're going to do something a little different. We are going to in fact have breakout sessions. We're going to let you guys pick where you want to go based on the presentations they're given. Thanksgiving. Dan's going to be talking about, talking to representatives, writing op-eds, things like that. Tom's going to be talking a really great Amtrak project down in Houston. And Barry's going to be talking about op-eds, regional, using Zoom for meetings, conference calls that he's been doing, things like of that sort. And then we'll wrap it up. We'll get back. We'll ask some questions. We'll start talking to you guys what your takeaways from these meetings are. And then we're going to do some quick wrap up polling. So actually, if we could launch our first set of polling. All right, so there should be 4 questions on the screen. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to answer. This is really about the last 18 months, what you guys have been up to in the height of this pandemic. Have you written an op-ed or an opinion piece in support of passenger rail locally, for your local journals, your personal blog, national newspaper, anything? Have you talked to elected officials about passenger rail? Have you coordinated with advocates in your general region, not just in your state or your city? And have you participated in any of our webinar series? We did 14 of them since last June. So we're just kind of get an idea here. And actually, all right. So actually, there's a half and half there so far with the op-eds. I'm very impressed. So yes, we just want to get a sense of what's going on, what you guys are up to. So we'll give that another minute to let you guys answer. All right. So while we're answering, let me go through a couple of slides. I want to thank Dan Bilka for organizing these slides for me. It's been a crazy week, as you guys can imagine, behind the scenes. So thank you very much for your help. So the gist of this workshop is that you are empowered. You are the council. You are our members. You don't need direct permission from us staff, from the association at the office to go out and you're going to hear some really cool ideas. I mentioned Tom Compson and this project down in Houston he's working on. I did assist. I made some connections for him, but this is completely on his own. So you don't necessarily, we do plenty of action alerts. We do plenty of messaging, but get out there and get your hands dirty. If there's things to do, go ahead and do them. We can help you with, connections to congressional offices, resources, materials. But a lot of time, the DC office, as Jim mentioned earlier, we cut staff. We're down 45% from what we were, a year or two ago. We're 5, but we're mighty. We have a couple volunteers, but we don't necessarily know what's going on in your neighborhood, in your neck of the woods. So reach out to us, let us know what's going on. We could help, but it's going to be up to you to kind of really get that ball moving. This is grassroots for a reason. And when you are talking to people, know your audience. Remember, why you may want passenger rail service or trains may not be the same reason someone else supporting. Example, a lot of people, we hear about the Floridian, the train from Miami to Chicago. It's not, so you don't have to go up the East Coast. You might want that for your reasons, for regionalization, for make it easier for you to get, along the routes. But the elected official, the staffer, might think of it as, okay, this is purely for jobs. It's not really the train itself, but what it's going to mean to our local economy, things like that. So you guys are on the same page. You just have to let those ideas grow. So you really can't force feed your issues. You really have to let those things grow. As it says, it might play well in New York, but how is it in Poughkeepsie? Don't ramrod why you feel it's important down someone's throats, because you want them to get on your side. You don't want to turn them off. Keep it professional, keep it constructive. And avoid burnout, because the pandemic's been rough. So what is make sure it's manageable tasks. You're a jack of all trades, master of none. You're gonna have your own expertise. A lot of you out there are transit workers. You guys have railroad guys. You guys have been around this much longer than I have. So I come to a lot of you folks for expertise. But you have to keep things manageable, and why we support what we support. Stiff as a board, light as a feather. And what you're going to learn throughout this workshop is these tools at your fingertips: web-based conferencing, conference calls, telephone, email, social media, the tools that we have to give you guys, handouts, one-pagers, brochures. We do, well, things have been a little rough lately with our newsletter. We do have an entire archive going back to the original days of NARP for on hand, and also business cards, whether it's from the association or your own original thing, business cards are, good to go. And this is what Dan put together for me, virtual and hybrid meetings. This is very, like what we're doing right here today. Fly-in meetings provide opportunities to get people to the meetings who are otherwise would not be able to attend. There's a lot of issues, big states, California, you can break it up and you can actually have 10 different regions in one state. Hard to get, with the train service isn't there, the schedule's hard, people can't drive. So virtual and hybrid meetings are really going to be the way to go to be more, active and in the future. It shows that you have a broad, unified coalition, and Big Sky Rail Authority has shown that some could be in person while sharing that on the screen, streaming what's going on in a boardroom so people can interact. And always have 3 takeaways. Be careful to avoid information inundation. Set yourself up to be continuing ongoing resource for an office when they have questions with passenger rail. Myself and Madison Butler, we were just interviewed by Condé Nast Traveler, not a normal passenger rail journal, but we have now become their go-to when it comes to information. And like I said, always have 3 takeaways that person can remember after the meeting. If you can't recall anything else about your meeting with that person, whatever you talked about, have those points ready in the future. And that said, enough of my rambling. I'm going to leave it up to the professionals. I'm going to leave it up to our board members, our council members, and they're going to pull you through before we get to our breakout rooms. So first off, we're going to introduce Dan Bilka. And there's Dan's bio is on the screen. Dan, and you can talk a little bit about yourself if you want, but after you, sir. Oh. Yeah, sorry, Dan. You're not muted, but you are actually not coming through. Your volume's not coming through at all. Dan, you might have to maybe log in, log out, log back in. Can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
There you are, Dan. Welcome back.
Okay, now that was weird. I don't know what it said. I was unmuted, but I guess you weren't hearing me. But yeah, as mentioned there on the slide, I'm Dan Bilka, board member with Rail Passengers. I'm doing this a while with Color Rail and formerly South Dakota representative. But kind of with the beginning off, cold turkey research or outreach, and a bit at first do your research and be able to know who are the people you want to try to do outreach and engagement with. You can do from internet, even check your local phone book to see where City Hall is and give them a call up and see who in town you want to be able to talk to about passenger rail and what it can bring to the local communities. Try to communicate with them directly and digitally at first, or even at mail, and give them a chance to start digesting the information that you send to them instead of just being able to do, like we said, the information inundation, and be able to have a constructive conversation once they're able to acclimate themselves to the idea. And be clear about what you're advocating for and why you're approaching them or them in their position or the community. How do you bring your message home to them, and what is sort of the hook that you're talking with and talking through with them on what passenger rail can bring a community, whether it be you're talking to the economic development person there, housing, mayor, and so forth. And that try to do a follow-up email if you at first don't hear anything, and then get on the phone and have a call with them, because I found at least half of the people who I never heard back from the initial outreach, whether it be mail or email, is that they did not get the original email in the first place, or that they got it and that 100 dozen other things were happening, so they were not able to respond in a timely manner. Next slide, please. And sort of, as I was mentioning, laying the digital groundwork, contacting communities and people first before going on a trip to make the most use of your time, and finding the right connections, since the people you reach out to at first, they might be interested in it, or it might be, along their lines, whether you're talking to the city administrator, city manager, mayor, so forth, but that you find out that the person that you would really be most influential talking to would be someone else who has a different job description, or someone who's maybe not in a formalized role as of right now, but they're the ones who could be your local champions there on the ground. And that people may want to meet with you if they've had a chance to review the information project beforehand, and that sort of being able to plan out your travels to be effective with your time. And I found with doing outreach and engagement, letting people know about the idea, the vision of passenger rail, and saying that I will be through town on such a date. And even if it was on a weekend, that different public leaders were able to try to meet with me, even being on a weekend beyond their typical business hours, since I was taking the time to approach and engage with them and be able to let them know about the vision, the project, and so forth, and having that sort of dialogue there. Next slide, please. And this is kind of one train trek I took last month going up to the Pacific Northwest Economic Forum up in Big Sky, Montana, and back from Denver, where I currently live, going up through Wheatland, Thermopolis, Grable, following what is the missing north-south connection in the greater West out here between what could be the North Coast Hiawatha and the California Zephyr. And that being able to do the outreach beforehand was increasingly beneficial for me to be able to build up the dialogue, build up the communications with the people who I needed to talk with in the communities, and be able to understand what their concerns are and be able to source the information that is relevant to them and most informs them to get them on board. Next slide. Again, kind of regional coordination, Barry will go through this a little bit more in depth, is to break out of your silos too, is that people and commerce readily travel over political boundaries, and rail advocacy and public policy needs to be nimble and well coordinated over regions. That if you're able to speak as a region over borders, you're able to help build up a coalition as neighbors helping neighbors, and recognize the part to whole relationship about how do your local projects help the overall cause for rail advocacy, and also understand the nuance is that projects elsewhere also help build up your case locally too, because it's one part of an interconnected system. It's too often in the past, certain nefarious interests have tried to hit like the long distance routes or the national network against the Northeast corridor. And it's not an either or, it's a yes and that we all need infrastructure investment and be able to help build up the system as a system and work constructively together. Since people are certain other industries, such as the highway lobby, they don't care if they're pouring cement in New York or California or Alaska or Hawaii, that they're just pouring cement. So we need to build up our national dialogue and our regional collaboration. Next slide, please. And that after you have the initial outreach and engagement with different people, knowing who the point people in the communities are that you need to talk to and be able to get the traction and get them on board with what resonates with them, is follow up with those you have met in a regular, timely manner. If they've had any questions there that maybe you weren't able to answer, needed to reach out to staff or other advocates to find the answers to those questions. And again, be a resource for the people you talk with and keep that dialogue going. And keep in contact with your congressional delegations throughout the year and not just a spring conference. I know different times that the organization will send out different action alerts, and if they're relevant to you in your area, to be able to sort of chime in with your congressional delegations in a timely manner and be kind of constructive with how does this come home to your local congressional district or your state, and what is the impact and benefit or harm on it. And coordinate with your fellow advocates throughout the region to support each other and get projects moving. Again, that people in commerce readily travel over political boundaries, and that we need to be able to have a substantiated vision and get that momentum going rather than sort of clunking along in a piecemeal, haphazard approach. And create a phone tree or contact list of local advocates throughout your region, and try to contact the delegation and advocate for good policy decisions. And that ultimately, as we're all finding, is that connections build on connections, and that we're able to help each other and help further the cause of passenger rail. Next slide, please. And that one example I have about the serendipity of connections, when I was meeting up in Grable, Wyoming, or down in Basin actually, with their county commissioners there, I got a list of about 5 to 10 people and organizations throughout the greater West region, both in Wyoming and in the greater region, that I was referred to go speak with them too about what the project or what passenger rail can bring to the entire region and the part to whole relationship therein. And that you really never know on who you meet and who you talk to, who the other connections that you can find because of them, and be able to build those inroads. And if you have a connection with one person, they can help foster those connections with someone else, rather than just sort of the cold turkey outreach from John Doe that they don't know. But if they have a reference email from someone that they do know, they might be more liable to click on it and be able to read through it thoroughly. Next slide, please. And this is my contact information. If you have any more questions, we'll kind of go through the next sort of presentations in the breakout rooms too. So I hope to see some of you on that as well. And then without further ado, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, Dan. I'll quickly introduce Tom's section. Like I said, I mentioned in my little rambling opener that Tom's got a really cool, actually, I'm a big fan of, that your membership should not stop at the station. When you get to your destination, how can we help you, find things to do, this and that? How can our membership really, be out there for you, station volunteers and whatnot. But so Tom joined the RPA's council earlier this year, representing Texas with a focus on Houston, where he's resided since 1998. He looks forward to increased passenger rail service and an attractive station befitting our nation's 4th largest city. Originally from Chicago, and Houston's nipping at our heels. So we're still top 3 for now. A native of Ohio, Tom and his wife also spend time in Traverse City, Michigan, frequently taking the Texas Eagle from Long Beach to Chicago. Without further ado, Tom Thompson.
Thanks, Joe. And you might be able to tell from what I'm wearing today, I am not in Houston. We're actually in the Upper Peninsula today. So calling from a restaurant. So I apologize for some background noise, but I'll just go ahead and plunge into it here. So a little background, and I think the pictures will really tell the story, but to put it bluntly, Houston's Amtrak station is not really the most welcoming experience for either arriving or departing passengers. It was built in 1960. It replaced what was a pretty beautiful station, certainly before my time in Houston, which that station itself was replaced by the U.S. Post Office. HOS, which is the Amtrak's numbers for its letters for the station there. It's literally tucked away in a little corner, northwest corner downtown, underneath a couple of interstate ramps, and you'll see those pictures in a minute. Parking is limited. There's very limited services at the station. I guess, in some ways, maybe we've gotten accustomed to second or third rate treatment as Amtrak passengers. I mean, compare like this station, for example, to the airport, you know, where you have restaurants, you got shopping. It's an attractive place. It's an attractive welcome to the city. This isn't. The train station isn't. And as I say there, it truly is a substandard gateway to America's fourth still largest city, hopefully catching up with Chicago in the next census. Next slide, please. Here is the former Grand Central Station. It was built in 1934. It lasted all of 25 years. That's somewhat of a pattern for Houston. Things don't last long. They get torn down and replaced by something new. But you can tell by the schematic, and these are pictures, by the way, that are inside the current Houston Amtrak station. It's a pretty cool collection of photos and tickets and brochures and so forth. But the picture on the left shows that there were multiple passenger lines coming through there, tracks lined up for people to get on. And I believe it was actually the crossings were underneath the tracks, if I remember right, from other drawings. On the right is a picture of the station itself. Pretty impressive Art Deco building. It's a real shame that we lost it. Next, please. So here's the current glory. As I said, literally under the interstate ramps, you can see the passenger platforms on the left, on that photo on the left. On the right, you have to look hard, but yeah, that is the passenger station on the left side of the photo there. You can see the limited parking, and then you can again see the passenger platforms running underneath that's Interstate 45 running over it. At least there is a sign. If you look hard on the right side of the photo, you can see there is a sign marking the station. It'd be interesting to do a survey of Houston residents and asking if, number one, if they knew that we have Amtrak service, and number two, if they have any idea where the station is. I think it would be very interesting to see those results. Next slide, please. So there is an opportunity, though. I mean, as unattractive as that area is, it's a lot better than it used to be, and it's getting even better. There was an abandoned building to the west side of the station. I don't show in these pictures, that the city has redeveloped as a permitting center, and it gets a lot of traffic. So at least now there's people going by, they can say, what's that building? Well, it's the train station. On the opposite side, on the east side of those highway ramps, is the former post office that is well along now, being redeveloped as a mixed-use facility by Lovett Commercial. And so it will have dining, shopping, entertainment, even a rooftop organic farm. And I believe things are going to start opening there this fall. So construction is well underway. It's really going to be a cool facility, and it would be a great opportunity to see how they can fit into each other. And I noticed when we actually went up to the station for Big Boy's visit, which I got a picture of that in a little bit, that there is some residential construction just on the north side of the tracks, the opposite side of the tracks from the station. Next slide, please. So the opportunity has presented itself with the redevelopment of the post office that, hey, I think the dream that many of us have had, I think a lot of longtime RPA members said, boy, it'd be great if we could get the Amtrak station back in the old post office. And I think that would be the ultimate goal. But in the meantime, maybe we could kind of inch our way there by providing a more attractive and safer connection for people to walk back and forth between the train station and the post development. And it'd be mutually beneficial. I mean, you have, according to Amtrak's figures here, we get about 30,000 people arriving or departing from the Houston Amtrak station every year, including 20,000 on the train itself, the Sunset, which is currently a tri-weekly train where, we have had an effort underway for years to get that to daily service. And we've actually heard from Amtrak that they plan to do that. So it's very encouraging. So anyway, about 20,000 a year of Sunset Limited passengers and 10,000 taking the bus connection, the dedicated Amtrak bus connection up to Longview to get on the Texas Eagle. And I'll get into what we're doing in dealing with the developer of the post redevelopment. But the idea, for them, the win for them is to get those people, or at least a chunk of those people, making that walk over to their facility to visit their tenants and, you know, do shopping, dining, etc. there while they're waiting on a train or upon their arrival getting back into town. Somebody, I think I caught a glimpse of a question regarding the Texas Central Railroad station. It's going to be several miles to the west of downtown in what's just north of the Northwest Transit Center, which is a major Houston Metro facility. And Metro is planning to develop a bus rapid transit, that's the BRT line, between the Northwest Transit Center and downtown. And at such time that the high-speed rail goes in, they would also extend a connection up to that. So we have also been in contact with Metro saying, hey, you need to add a stop. It's going to go right by the station on the existing I can't think of the name right now, but essentially transit connection that runs by the station. So we're arguing not only for the station, but also for the post development. You know, you need to add a stop on the BRT right here. Next slide, please. So again, I mentioned, you know, I think it'd be great in the long term if we actually move the station either into the post development or right next to it, right across the tracks or somewhere nearby. But for now, let's start with the doable, and maybe just for now, wayfinding signs, pavement markings, brochures, lights would be great, especially at night. Covered walkway would be great for weather. I mean, obviously it'd be great if we could get it air conditioned too, because most of the year it's uncomfortable there. And we definitely need to address security concerns. But the idea is to show people that there's more to Houston than just this somewhat dismal entryway that we currently have. Next slide, please. And this is an aerial view of the setup. The big building to the right of the interstates there is the post office that's now being redeveloped. The station is just to the left. You can see there, you can see the sheds going underneath the interstate ramps where the passenger platforms are. And I just sketched on there a couple of possible routes, and these are going to have to be discussed not only with the post developer, but with Amtrak, with Union Pacific, a number of people, you know, that either own or lease the land there. So the blue one seems to make sense because you're going right along there where the current sheds are. But there may be some security concerns about going right next to active railroad tracks, so that would have to be dealt with. So the short-term connection may be what I've shown there in red, and there's an existing gateway. There's fencing, as you can imagine, going all the way around the post development. I don't know if that's going to stay there after they're done with the construction. It might need to because of security, but there is a gate in that fence, and I think that would provide a pretty, you know, access as well as a control point. But that's something that'll be developed, that will be discussed between Amtrak and the post to begin with, and then other entities as we move forward. Next slide, please. So this is just a view of it. You can kind of see as you look under the ramp that kind of beige area there is actually the post office that's being redeveloped. This is the parking lot. This was a very busy day because this happened to be the day that the big boy was in town. And you can see downtown Houston over to the right there. Next, please. So yeah, the connections. So back in 2019, I worked with one of my friends who knows the president of Lovett and said, hey, could you get me in touch with him? I'd like to start talking with him about this opportunity to create a connection. We've just now, thanks to Joe's help, we got a contact with Amtrak in Texas, and we have set up a meeting for next Monday between the president of Lovett and our Amtrak representative. Her name is Alexandra. And as we move forward, assuming that we get a concept in place, or at least an agreement to develop a concept between Lovett and Amtrak, then we'll need to bring in other parties. UP owns the station, they own the land. You know, maybe funding opportunities could be pursued with the Downtown Redevelopment Authority. The TERS is a tax increment reinvestment zone, which some of you may be familiar with. I won't go into the mechanics of it, but it does make funding available for investment within a defined area. We'd probably like to get the mayor's office involved. We've already been in contact with the planning department of the city of Houston. I think it makes sense to get some council members on board, the Harris County Commission, that you can see the whole list there. It's a lot of folks that we're going to have to get engaged. And then once we get, I don't want to get the cart before the horse. I think it's important to talk to these people first before we start a broader public outreach effort, but I'm certainly open to suggestion, and maybe we can explore that further in the breakout session. You know, at what point do we start trying to build a broader awareness within the general public? And what's the best way to do that? Next slide, please. So here's, again, on the left is kind of where we are now. On the right, this was an opportunistic photograph. One big boy was in town, and the timing was great because it also happened to be when the sunset, the eastbound sunset that goes to New Orleans, happened to be coming through on time on its way through. So if people didn't know where the Houston Amtrak station was, at least Big Boy was a big draw that brought a lot of folks into downtown where the station is. You can see their train on the right. And of course, the sunset on the left. And then farther to the left, you can see the front end of Big Boy itself. So there's a great opportunity for publicity. If I'd been thinking a little bit more proactively, it would have been a great opportunity for us to set up a booth and say, hey, wouldn't you like to have a nicer experience for Amtrak passengers? But maybe that can be something we can look at in the future. The next slide, please. So that's it. There's my contact information, and we'll go on to the next speaker. Thanks, Joe.
Tom, thank you so much. Like I said, it's actually, I'm looking forward to getting down there myself and actually seeing how the redevelopment of the post office is going to, affect the Houston. And a great example is look at what they're doing in Denver. Denver Union Station. That redevelopment has been fantastic. I mean, there was a spot for one of our fall meetings. And just many restaurants and hotels around the area, all centered around that this baseball stadium, and as well as the Union Station. So like there's a great example on the western half of our map that Houston could look towards. All right, so now we've gone overall with Dan, we've gone very local with Tom. Now we're going to get regional with Barry Green. And this is also what you guys as council members and board members and members, just members in general, can do to stay engaged in our pandemic world. So Barry Green, retired locomotive engineer from BNSF Railway after 40 years in Glendive, Montana. During his years with BNSF, presented safety and rules classes to coworkers, involved with the safety and quality teams, trained new locomotive engineers and new locomotive technology to locomotive engineers in Glendive, held positions of president, assistant treasurer, secretary and treasurer, and legislative rep for the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trademen, union strong as always, have been active with NARP and RPA since the early 1980s, holding his positions of director at large, council rep, Northwest Division team leader, oversees rail passengers members in Idaho and North Dakota, since we actually don't have council reps in those states. If you're out there from Idaho or North Dakota, get on, get there's council seats available. Jump on. We need your help. And then it interacts with a regular basis with the DC congressional delegations for Montana, Idaho, and North Dakota. Has 4 children and 10 grandchildren. And then during Barry's presentation, we're going to have a couple more poll questions loaded up. So without further ado, Mr. Barry Green.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate the introduction, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone from Eastern Montana. As Joe said, kind of be talking about how we interact and engage in a COVID era in a technological world. First item here is you need to become involved in either a small or a big way. All types of organizations, as you know, are in search of volunteers, and RPA is no different. You can participate as little or as much as you would like. Become a member. Ask your friends to join also. Join a state or states associations of railroad passengers groups if you haven't already done so. If you don't want to be a quote member, consider giving donations throughout the year to advance the passenger rail advocacy work in your state or across the country. We also have a member in Oregon who is a therapy dog handler and he usually brings his dog or dogs along to accompany him to passenger rail events in the Portland, Oregon area. And that's why you see the dog at the end of the word volunteers. Next slide, Joe. Communicate and network, and that's the big thing. RPA division team leaders like myself or their designees should consider holding regular audio or audio video conference calls for their council reps or members. There's always something to talk about, whether it be on the state or national level. Connect with your counterparts throughout the year. We've been doing this for quite a while out here in the Northwest Division, as far back as Art Poole, to Jim Hamray, now deceased, to myself. And we hold regular every other month council rep council calls. We have our division liaison on there with us, Mike Christensen from Salt Lake City, Utah. We also usually invite Jim Matthews and Ken Bryars to attend, knowing full well they're on the East Coast time, but from time to time they're able to pop up on the call and see what's happening out here in the Northwest area of the country. Next slide, Joe. Get the word out. You've heard that earlier, and I just want to concentrate. As most of you know, the RPA website offers a voluminous amount of information on the benefits of all types of passenger rail services that you and others can use. It may also give you a sense of what's happening around the country regarding passenger rail that you may be able to mimic in your part of the country. Consider submitting letters to the editors for newspapers or magazines, as was talked about earlier. You don't have to get the word out about the benefit of passenger trains by using nothing but social media. So there's still a segment of the population that appreciates reading print publications. So don't discount them either. I'm not a social media type of person, so probably many of you out there are more in tune with all these other icons than I am. So I'm more of the traditionalist when it comes to getting the word out. You want to talk about opinion piece about state or federal legislation that lays out the reasons for having passenger trains as a public transportation choice in our country. Planes and autos, as we know, won't solve everyone's travel requirements. Next slide, Joe.
All right, we're going to put a couple more poll questions out there while Barry gets ready to talk about, like, our action alerts and advocacy on the legislative side. So this is a quick questions about actually participating in this year's, in April's, virtual Day on the Hill. And we'll let this go for a minute or two on the screen, and Barry, continue.
Okay. RPA DC action alerts as projects. Many of you know and are aware that you should be on the watch in your email for action alerts, projects, or requests specific to your state or on the national scene that are sent out by email and posted on the RPA website, usually during the weekly newsletter. The organization has a very strong asset, and that's why I would like to give a shout out to Sean Jean Scale, our Vice President Policy and Government Affairs. He is a wealth of current and upcoming federal legislative information when it comes to Amtrak, rail transit funding, and legislative policies. Keep him informed too whenever you receive a response back from the DC congressional senators and representatives. It at least gives him an idea of kind of the pulse beat of the various senators and representatives around the country on the types of responses you as a constituent might receive, so that he can see which column individual congressional people are leaning towards when it comes to various legislative items that are being voted on affecting Amtrak or passenger rail in general. You can go to the next one, Joe, please. RPA DC press releases, or issue your own. You may snag an interview. You can forward the press releases that are sent out by RPA, the DC office, to your local and statewide newspapers for publications. State associations of railroad passengers, if they haven't, can issue press releases. You may be announcing news that may affect your state or a specific community. Then there's a chance you'll be contacted for a newspaper, radio, or TV interview, since media outlets like to get a local person's perspective on community or statewide issues. That's happened to me. I've done all three forms there. It's kind of an interesting interesting scenario when you do get contacted by them, but they're all fairly decent if you're not getting to the weeds of anything. And I can talk a little bit more about that during the breakout room. And next slide, Joe, please. COVID pandemic in the future. Guys, we just don't know what is going to happen in the future. COVID has caused a lot of us to rely more on technology today than ever in the past. For the past 18 months, many of us have attended meetings, webinars, and personal gatherings via the audiovisual platforms that are available. A lot of us probably haven't ventured out into large crowd settings or even taken many, if any, Amtrak trips across the country. As you see by my slide, hybrid or in-person virtual meetings might be with us still for a while. There are benefits, as was mentioned earlier. It does make it easier for others to attend that maybe have difficulties traveling now, or the cost of it, but you can still get together and hold a meeting just like we are doing today. So, you know, don't write off technology. There's a whole lot of it out there, and it's pretty amazing as per what continues to get out there. So in the meantime, we can look forward when it'll be safe again to hopefully return to face-to-face meetings, both on a regional and national level. Handouts that we do or contacts that we make in the stations and on trains, maybe being at a booth or a table at fairs, other community activities and events, or participating in special events as we're either promoting our State Passenger Rail Association or the RPA on a national level. Last slide, Joe. Thank you. There's my contact information, people. P.O. Box, home phone, and my email. And I am more than welcome to receive, you know, calls or inquiries relevant to how you set up these meetings, you know, how I happen to have them orchestrated, how we've done them for so long, if anybody is interested in that. I don't have my own Zoom account, people, just to let you know. I share off of a couple of accounts. I do have a knockoff of Zoom, which does work and just happens to be free. So, but I don't use Zoom as regularly to justify the price for it. So we can get around that by sharing. So Joe, that's what I have. Thanks for advancing the slides, and thank you everyone for listening to my presentation.
All right, thank you, Barry. And there's nothing wrong with Zoom. It's been a great platform for us. We're not advertising for them, but like I said earlier, there's GoToMeeting, there's free conference call. Actually, I participate in a monthly call with a fellow communication groups from around the country, and actually we use a freeconferencecall.com. You don't have there are plenty of tools out there for you to use that you don't actually have to pay for. All right, so now we're gonna get a little interactive. Hopefully this works out. This is the first time we've done breakout rooms for this. And actually someone had asked earlier if the slides will be available. Yes, we will make these slides available. There was a lot of information, a lot of great information, a lot of good pictures, a lot of good information from Barry and Dan that we will make this available. We actually are going to have a website, railpassengers.org/Zoom tools, which it's going to show you where our legislative resources from Sean Jeans Gale are, where our state ridership numbers are from Amtrak, where our one-pagers are, and this presentation. And we'll have links to I'll have another link to the other webinars we've done, just kind of like a one-stop shop based on this workshop, the tools that you can use.